When the novel coronavirus broke out in 2019, the world did not anticipate its impact. Its social and economic effects were unprecedented. Lockdowns worsened food security, unemployment, and access to public health. And some of us did not take COVID-19 seriously. It's just the flu, but a little worse. Drinking alcohol will kill the virus. It only exists in countries with colder climates. 2021. Everything has changed. And this is just the beginning.
Actually entered an age of pandemics.
The COVID-19 pandemic continues to have an unprecedented
The pandemic
impact.
is gaining momentum in Gauteng province.
The spread of COVID-19 has been wide and swift. In December 2019, it was reported in Wuhan, China, that there were patients with viral pneumonia of unknown cause. In the new year, they identified the virus responsible, SARS-CoV-2. By January 2020, cases were confirmed in Japan, the United States, and France. When the outbreak reached Italy, it overwhelmed their health system with a surge in infections. It was only a matter of time before the virus reached South Africa, and on March 1st, 2020, a man returned home from a trip to Italy. He became South Africa's official patient zero. 10 days later, amid rising cases, the World Health Organization called it
COVID-19 can be characterized as a pandemic.
Before the declaration, before the virus had even popped up in South Africa, the nation's best scientists had already set up a lab to start researching the virus. And this man, a professor and later co-chair of the Ministerial Advisory Committee on COVID-19, became one of the best-known faces and voices in South Africa. For Professor Salim Abdul Karim, the situation in Italy was a major warning.
There was no doubt in my mind that if it could spread to Italy, it was coming here. There's no question of that, because our borders are porous. We have just too many links with Europe that it would be hard to conceive that somehow we will be protected. And so it was just a matter of time. I don't think there was ever any question that it was coming here.
COVID-19 is, of course, not the first pandemic humanity has faced. There was the Bubonic plague, known as the Black Death in the 14th century, and we're still trying to get a handle on HIV and AIDS. But it was the 1918 Spanish flu that drew the most comparisons with the 2019 coronavirus. While the public health effort might have been similar, the quarantining, the mass sanitization, scientifically, there was little common ground between the two diseases.
The coronavirus behaves quite differently. Flu behaves in very specific ways. We know its two main antigens. We know how they change. We can predict what's going on to some extent. In the case of the coronavirus, that the first wave was coming with a virus that came from animals. So it's a virus just recently transmitted from animals into humans. So it's not well adapted to humans. By the time you get to the second wave, the virus is now adapted to humans. It's now better able to cause infection. It's more fit for purpose. It's better at being a virus and better at being a human virus.
It was clear that we were dealing with something new.
We are building the ship as we're sailing it.
And despite unprecedented progress, many aspects of COVID-19 remain a mystery, such as symptoms. In the beginning, it seemed as if we knew a set of symptoms that would affect most people. But then came the rare symptoms, and then what's become known as long COVID-19.
COVID is a disease from head to toe. It causes in the head confusion. It causes a stroke because of the clotting that you get. And all the way down to the toe, it causes COVID toes, a little purplish blotches that you get in between the toes. So it affects everything. It affects your entire body. And that's when we began to understand COVID is a disease that goes through these three phases. The first is the viremic phase. The second is the immune response phase. And the third is for those who don't recover, they get long COVID. Long COVID is debilitating. We don't know how long it takes to recover, but it seems that most people recover on their own.
Haji Muhammad Dauji is one such long hauler. Initially, her disease progressed predictably, but then came the neurological symptoms. She became dyslexic and ended up suffering many of the rarer symptoms for 23 weeks.
My brain wasn't functioning and I was stuttering, and it was just all very, very weird. And it really, really scared me that a lot of the stuff that was happening to me was neurological and also bone related. And I didn't have or don't have any comorbidities. I was like super fit, super healthy. So I anticipated, at best it would be a week or two, and that would be that, and it would be done with. So when it just didn't go away and things just sort of started getting worse and worse and worse, it had an impact on my emotional well-being and my mental health as well. And we just, had our baby at the same time, and my partner was a single parent for like that whole time, so there were a lot of external stresses as well, and I just wanted to get better. Of the lingering effects that I've had from COVID is that one of my eyes has become completely lazy, and on some days it's lazier than others, but that's just been constant. It hasn't gone away. In fact, I think sometimes it gets worse. My wife likes to make fun of it and call it COVID eye. And I guess that's just how you get through things. But it doesn't bug me. I've made my peace with it. I don't know if it's ever going to go away. But that's just the way it is now.
24-year-old Yassine Kipi is also still suffering the after effects. His case was particularly severe. He was hospitalized and became so ill, his doctors intubated him and put him in an induced coma.
Unconscious for about 19 days till mid-September. And that's when I woke up and I realized that I couldn't move my body. And this all happened, as a result of COVID complications. When it comes to my current challenges in terms of my body, so obviously COVID affected the peripheral nervous system. And so my left arm is completely subluxed, which means that it's almost out of its socket because of the muscles that usually keeps it intact, depleted. My right arm was also quite bad, but at least I can still move it. My right hand, I could only move like this in the beginning, but now I can move it like this.
What we're seeing is that, our usual tests, like I'm in ICU, we very frequently see long-term or longer dysfunction after ICU. But with long COVID, in the literature, this pans out too, that people just feel unwell despite their tests looking better. So lung functions are improving, x-rays are improving, but the patient in front of you says, I'm not able to function as I did before. But this long COVID is definitely a very interesting entity, and it is different from what we typically see after an ICU admission.
In desperate efforts to find a cure, many have turned to home remedies, from drinking garlic and ginger tea to U.S. former President Donald Trump's advocating for the use of anti-inflammatory drug hydroxychloroquine. The WHO found that these had no meaningful effect on deaths or hospitalizations, and might even increase the risk of adverse consequences.
One of the things that I have seen in this epidemic is that in the first wave, as the cases started rising, people started getting very concerned. People started getting anxious, and they began to feel helpless, and they wanted something to help them deal with this problem. I want a miracle cure. I want my miracle cure and I want it now. So, first miracle cure I had to deal with hydroxychloroquine. And I said at the time, this is a malaria drug, kills parasites. What's wrong with you? It's got no antiviral activity. No. Before I knew it, hydroxychloroquine was bought up at every pharmacy. There was no hydroxychloroquine anymore. You couldn't get it. And of course, presidents were promoting it and so on. I then had to deal with artemisinin. And people were saying to me, why isn't it our government is following, why are we not following Madagascar? Can you see in Madagascar, that president has got the artemisinin, he put it in a bottle, he gave it to everybody, nobody got COVID in Madagascar. I said, you gotta be kidding. Artemisinin works against malaria. It's a parasitic drug. Doesn't work against viruses. What are you talking about? He said, no, here's a study done in Germany, showed that it kills viruses. I said, oh yeah, no, you're right, it does. But you know, if I put normal water or sunlight in this experiment, you know it'll kill the virus, right? I mean, anything, soap kills the virus. So that's not proof of anything. In the second wave, same thing. And first drug, we want ivermectin. I said, ivermectin kills roundworms. Okay, you can use it to treat severe scabies if you like. It doesn't work against viruses. Once the wave settles, everybody's fine. They don't need miracle cures anymore. They're fine. And I can tell you now, ivermectin is going to simmer for a bit. The clinical trial results will come out. If it works, so be it. If it doesn't work, so be it. But next wave, I'm thinking now, what new parasitic drug is going to come out as the miracle cure?
Ultimately, the only way to stop or even slow COVID-19 was with a reliable vaccine, and the race to find it was on. Within less than a year, the first vaccine from Pfizer was approved for emergency use. The speed, like so much else associated with this pandemic, was unheard of.
Most often vaccines, from the time of conceptualization to the point where they can be rolled out is many years. So, by contrast, we've been looking for an HIV vaccine for 35 years and we're still looking. Typhoid, I think, took similarly 30, 40 years. So I do think this is unprecedented that from the time of discovery, which was, essentially December, January a year ago, to actually deploying a vaccine before the end of the year or early, within a 12-month period is extraordinary.
Also extraordinary is the ability of the virus to mutate. Variants were discovered in several countries, but it was the 501YV2 variant that was first identified in South Africa that really concerned top scientists.
So it came as a bit of a shock to all of us in November when we saw that there's a new variant that has 23 mutations overnight. That worried us because now we began to understand that actually this virus can make big changes, not just small changes. If it can make big changes once, it can do it over and over and over.
So is there any hope in the face of a microscopic enemy that moves faster than we can conceive of?
This becomes a tussle between the virus and the human. I think because humans have science on their side, I would back the humans to win in this battle any day because we're smarter than the virus. We can make a vaccine ultimately that will just deal with this virus and all its variants.
With every new bit of research, we understand COVID-19 better. And South Africa's scientists have been at the forefront of that effort. It was us who uncovered the 501YV2 variant of the virus, and 33-year-old Sandile Cele a scientist from the Africa Health Research Institute, was the first to grow it. Cele is hoping his story, which started with humble roots in rural KwaZulu-Natal, will inspire others.
Now, young South Africans will see what scientists do. I think all these discoveries that we are doing, they're going to share some light to the youth that this is what you can do as a scientist and this is how much impact you can have. So it's not about always being a doctor or a lawyer.
While so many questions are still yet to be answered, one question that rings in everyone's head is, will life ever return to the old normal?
I can't see why anyone wants to go back to pre-COVID days. Our world has changed, and it will change. And post-COVID, our world is going to be different from pre-COVID. Gone are the days where we had people flying around all over the world to attend meetings. Zoom is here to stay. We have a whole lot of changes that are making our world green. We have to support those changes. We have to decrease our carbon footprint. But also, this coronavirus is a sign of things to come. It's only the first pandemic. There are many more. They're coming. Might not be in the next year, 2 years, 5 years, but it's coming. We need, as a world, to take on and be prepared for those next pandemics.
For more, go to ewn.co.za.